James Franklin is not a good coach. He's not a bad coach neither. He's the definition of what it means to be mid. He's a mid coach at best, okay? He's not a bad coach because he's a good recruiter. He normally assembles a really good coaching staff. He's really good at developing talent and getting those guys into the NFL. And he wins the games that he's supposed to win against teams that Penn State have a huge talent advantage over. But the reason why I can't say James Franklin is a good coach is because Penn State, for the last couple of years, for all those 10-2 seasons that they've had, those 2 losses have come in the biggest games of the season that determine if Penn State can not only win the Big Ten title, but get into the college football playoffs, and that being against Michigan and Ohio State, which James Franklin has a whopping incredible record of 4-16 against those 2 teams. And against top 25 opponents, he's 12-25, and he's 3-17 against top 10 teams. This is not the kind of win-loss record that you expect out of a good head coach, which is why I call James Franklin mid. And this season, we're really just going to get the truth about just how good James Franklin is as a head coach, because you don't have to play Michigan this year, but you do have to play Ohio State at home, and you have to play Wisconsin on the road and USC. Luke Fickell is a really good head coach. He got Cincinnati to the college football playoffs when it was only 4 teams, and that's back when it was impossible, according to most people, for a G5 school to get in, and they were pretty competitive with Alabama. And they had a lot of NFL guys off that Cincinnati squad. Sauce Gardner, Kobe Bryant, Desmond Ridder, Jerome Ford. You know, that was a really good team that Luke Fickell had down there at Cincy when they went to the CFP that year. Okay, you got to play West Virginia early. You should be able to win that game, but we're going to find out how good he is when you're going up against Lincoln Riley, who I feel is being incredibly disrespected. When you're going up against Luke Fickell on the road and you're playing Ryan Day and company at home and you got Jet Fish coming into town. You know, with James Franklin, I cannot trust this dude to win a big game until I see it with my own eyes, because I got burnt by Penn State twice this year. I put money on them to beat Michigan and I lost my $250. I put money on them to beat Ohio State and I lost my money betting on them to win that game. I've been burnt way too many times by James Franklin to ever put stock in this dude being able to win a big game. And part of being a good coach in college football is you being able to win games against the best teams in your conference. A large reason why Penn State has had the luxury of being consistent with these 10-2 seasons is because it's easy to go 10-2 when you can beat the Marylands, the Rutgers, and the Northwesterns of the world with ease, but you always lose to the 2 games that matter the most: Michigan and Ohio State. This has been a 3-team conference for the last decade and a half. Only 3 teams have been relevant in this thing, and Penn State is considered to be in the big 3, but they've been the lesser of the other 2 programs. I'm not hating on James Franklin. I'm just keeping it real. I cannot ignore you having a 12-25 record against top 25 teams, 3-17 against top 10 teams, and you're 4-16 against the 2 best games or the 2 best teams in your conference. Those Michigan-Ohio State games meant everything for Penn State. And now with the college football playoffs expanding to 12 teams, like, cool. You could be a lock to get in. I don't know. I think you could be a 9-3 team this year if you ask me, because I don't think that USC and Wisconsin are guaranteed dubs against Luke Fickell and Lincoln Riley, who are pretty good coaches. And even if you do get to the college football playoffs, you mean to tell me that you're going to be good enough to get out of the first round with this dude as your head coach? Because I would bet on Penn State being an early first round exit, because history shows us otherwise. You can't trust little game James Franklin in big games. Isn't that a fair name for this dude? Because every time Penn State gets in these big games, they never win them. It's like, it's easy to look at him and say, yeah, he's a good coach because they go 10-2 every year. When you really look at the context, it's like, yeah, you're going 10-2, but the 2 biggest games of your season that determine how the year goes for you, you always lose. It's like, Ohio State, you play them at home, but is it safe right now just to chalk that up as an L? I mean, he's 4-16 against them already. He's 1-9 against Ohio State. He's had more success against Michigan than he's had against Ohio State. But listen, this dude is the definition of mid. He's not a bad head coach, but he's not a good one either. Until we see what Penn State does this year and they can beat USC with Lincoln Riley, Wisconsin with Luke Fickell, and they can beat Ohio State, I'm not calling this dude a good coach. I'm not saying he's overrated, even though I probably would say he's overrated. I don't care where he's rated, because wherever he's rated at, he definitely shouldn't be there. If he's a top 15, top 20 coach, I view him as like a top 25, top 30 coach. And there are people who say, well, think about what James Franklin took over with everything Penn State had going on with Jerry Sandusky and whatnot. Bro, that was Bill O'Brien. Don't take that away from Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien rebuilt Penn State so James Franklin could run with it. I'm not hating on James Franklin. He's a solid coach, but he's not a good coach, and nor is he a bad coach. He's the definition of mid.